Welcome to another episode of the Wealthy Podcast. I'm your host, Shauna Nyros, and today I'm joined by Angus MacKay, who is a local pediatric physiotherapist, and he's here to talk to me about pelvic floor health for kids. This episode was so much fun, so informative. I think we could probably use a poo counter on this episode somewhere because of the amount of times that it came up in conversation. Don't sleep on poo, especially for our kids. But also we've got different pee sounds, we've got songs, and we've got a whole lot of really, really good information, especially for parents of kids of any age who may or may not be struggling with bowel or urinary issues. This is an episode you're not going to want to miss. Listen up. If you've listened to our past episodes with Corrine Wade, where we explored pelvic floor health in adult women and men, you'll recall how vital those muscles are for everything from back stability to bladder, bowel, and sexual function. Today, we're moving the focus earlier in life to how pelvic floor health relates to children, a domain less talked about, but that's why we're here. Because children are not simply small adults. The signs of pelvic floor dysfunction look different. Things like bedwetting beyond the age you'd expect, recurrent constipation, daytime urinary leaks, or frequent urges can all be subtle cues. It's estimated that up to 10% of kiddos aged 5 to 13 experience daytime urinary incontinence. In Canada, functional constipation, and we'll talk about what that means, affects up to 1 in 3 kids at some point. And because bowel and bladder symptoms are closely linked, issues like urinary urgency or wetting can often be traced back to pelvic floor or bowel function. It's estimated that 15 to 20% of children aged 5 to 6 still wet the bed, and 1 in 10 8 to 10-year-olds still have nighttime accidents. For many kids and families, these are not just stats. They come with a little red wagon full of shame and frustration, anxiety, and sadness. They affect self-esteem, school performance, social participation, and may hint at underlying pelvic floor muscle or coordination issues. Here in the Southern Interior, families have access to local pediatric physiotherapy resources tailored to pelvic health, such as those offered by Kids Physio Group Kelowna. And that's why I'm welcoming Angus MacKay today, who is a dedicated pediatric physiotherapist helping kids and families navigate these issues. In our conversation today, we'll unpack how pelvic floor health functions for kids, what to watch for, what parents and caregivers can do, and how early intervention makes a big difference. Welcome, Angus. That was a big intro, but there's a lot to say on this subject. I'm so happy to have you. Welcome to the Wealthy Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. That was an incredible intro. I think you're a pelvic floor physiotherapist yourself. This is great.
Well, I'm slowly becoming an expert. We've had the opportunity to speak with your friend and colleague, Corrine Wade, 2 episodes, one focusing on women, one focusing on men, and both were really, really informative. But Corrine also flagged that children should be brought into the conversation and that you're the guy for that.
Yeah, locally, sure, I'm the guy.
Yeah. So I want to just first start by asking you how you got here. How did you get into physiotherapy? I know you're a local guy. You grew up here in Kelowna, which is awesome. So just curious about your path and what led you to have this specialty in pelvic floor physio specifically for kids. Sure. I know you do the whole gamut of physio, but this is an area of specialty for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Pelvic floor physiotherapy is definitely where my career is definitely trending towards in terms of a specialty area for me, where I feel like I'm not there yet, but I'll one day hopefully call myself an expert.
Mm-hmm.
But the physiotherapy journey, my wife and I moved down to Vancouver when she graduated from nursing school, and I was still in the pursuit of getting into physiotherapy school. And a friend of mine put me onto a local clinic down in Vancouver, and she had messaged me saying, hey, there's this really incredible place. I just did a research kind of project with them. They're looking for volunteers. I think you'd be a great fit. And I was like, oh, cool. What kind of clinic is it? It's like, oh, it's a kids clinic. It's called Kids Physio Group. I was like, I don't know. There's physio for kids. Like, this is the first I'd ever heard of it. Growing up here in Kelowna, I had gone to my own physiotherapist for, sports related injuries. I'd had some back pain. I had some like foot and ankle injuries, but never anything before that. And so I showed up to the clinic. I applied to be volunteer. I started volunteering with them, and it was wild. To go into this room, and you have to imagine a pediatric physiotherapy clinic isn't set up like a medical office. It's not set up like your traditional physiotherapy office. It's set up like a larger kind of open play space. So you get kids coming in for this physiotherapy treatment, and they're playing games, and they're being whimsical, and they're telling stories. And when they're getting a little bit older in their teenage years, they're hanging out with friends, and they're getting stronger, and they're doing so in like a very gamified format. And I saw this, and I was like, I have to do this. This is the coolest career ever. So I got into physiotherapy school in Australia, down in Brisbane. So my wife and I moved down there.
Fun.
Oh, it was a blast.
Yeah.
Anyone who wants to visit Australia really should. Had an incredible degree there, and then made the move to come back to Vancouver. I needed to come back and work for that exact same company. So I worked there for a couple of years as a physiotherapist, took on some leadership roles, and told the owner and founder, Laura Patrick, I said, look, we really need to bring this back to our hometown. Kelowna needs something like this. Like, I feel like my wife and I, Sydney, we can champion and be your next clinic out there. And they had just started to roll out the clinic in terms of a franchise model, so it made perfect sense. But also at the same time, unfortunately, COVID hit.
Yeah.
So
such a pain in the butt for everybody.
It was. Yeah. So we moved back here, and I actually had some work with Interior Health here. I helped start up the West Kelowna Urgent Primary Care Center. I helped work. My first job here in Interior Health was welcome to the floor. This is the COVID unit. Oh, okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. This is a good place to be.
4 West back then. Yeah.
It was 6 West. It had just been the beautiful stroke unit had been converted to the respiratory unit. Yeah. But I got to work with a really great team, and I think it actually set me up in a really great place to understand this community more, understand who was currently practicing this community and what services already existed. And that set us up to open our clinic and be able to really integrate ourselves well, not to just be like the strangers on the block, to be the healthcare providers who already kind of knew a lot of like the nuances of the community. And here we are almost 5 years later, and our clinic has grown from just the team of Sid and I to now team of 21.
Amazing. Yeah, that is such a I love that story. And I have 2 kids. It's no secret I have 2 kids that are both at various stages in their own sort of post-high school academic journeys. One of them, my youngest, is thinking about getting into either physio or occupational therapy. But it's awesome to just hear that you're parlaying this desire to bring these services to Kelowna with your interest in helping kids, which is awesome. How did you end up, was it just, so the pelvic floor area of your practice, did that come from just the kiddos coming through the door having these issues, or was this something that you had identified was perhaps a gap and a need in our community?
I had actually identified it as an area I did not want to work in early on. I think in my first year, a few of my friends who are more advanced in their practice had said, hey, we're doing this really great course for kids' pelvic health. And I was like, what do you do for kids' pelvic health? Like, I'd only just started learning about women and men's pelvic health. Yeah. And they're describing, I was like, wow, that sounds really rewarding. What a great career, not for me. Yeah. And so fast forward a couple of years after we opened here, some referrals started to come through the door, and Corinne and I started talking about that, there's a lot of kids in this community who need this service. And I said, well, it's nothing that our team is currently trained in. At that point, there was 3 physios, including myself. I hadn't done any sort of training. So we tried to liaise with some of our clinicians on the coast and do a bit of telehealth, and with me supporting for some more in-person stuff. And that helped. But I was like, I could do better. I can do this training. I can help these kids in person. So I did the training. I've gone through a number of different courses, and it went from an area that I had no interest in to an area that I am obsessed with. I am so fascinated by it because not only is it such a complex and convoluted area in terms of the amount of different practitioners, the amount of different contributing factors that can be affecting these kids, but the impact on families is huge. And when you are a part of that team that helps resolve that, it is so rewarding, and it is so incredible to see kids reach their goals. So it's an area that really, really captured my heart. And I look forward to, hopefully a long career in it. And I look forward to more learning and more kids to be helped in this community.
I love that you're here and that we're actually having this conversation, because it's just like, I think pelvic health in general is overlooked as an area of health care, but specifically when we're talking about kids, it can be so difficult, and it's like one of those behind the curtain family issues that people don't really talk about. And when they do talk about it, it's just sort of like this shameful thing. I have a child that is still having, bedtime wetting issues. And I imagine that it is really difficult, not just for kids, but also for families to have to navigate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It can be really, really challenging for families, both from a perspective, like you through the having kids of your own, that through the developmental period, there's a point where the kids don't really care. They could be having,
they don't know.
They could have a bladder leak or a bowel leak, like while they're playing, and they're like, that's just me. Clean me up. I'm going to get back to it. And if that's happening very, very frequently, of course, that's interruptive to life, especially for families where you're like, we want to travel. We want to go away. It's hard if we're having these constant bladder and bowel leaks. But there is that certain point in development where all of a sudden that kind of light bulb starts to turn on and the kid understands I'm a little bit different. And that's a really, really sad and profound stage for these kids. So yeah, it's something that it's tough, because then all of a sudden everything becomes internalized. I don't want to tell people that I'm different. I am ashamed, like I am bad. And it's one of the very first conversations I had with family. One of my first sentences after I introduced myself is, I want to let you know that like this is not your fault. This is your body not doing the right job. And we as a team are going to help your body do its job so that you can just be you.
Totally. And I imagine it can be very demoralizing for a child. Some of the, let's call it temporary solutions to those issues, like wearing some sort of like a diaper or something like that, when you're at an age where other kids can see and notice, and maybe you've had an accident at school, and I'm sure it can be such a relief to find out that there's a person like you in the world that can look them in the eye and say, you know what, I know this is hard for you, and I'm going to help you fix it, right? As opposed to these temporary solutions that really probably don't feel very good.
Yeah, and I think even to have that person that you can be open and honest with about everything that's going on, like you haven't been able to tell the truth to anyone. You might not even be telling the exact full truth to your family.
Right.
And to be able to come in and just with no shame, no barriers, just say, this is what's happening. I hope that when kids are able to do that, that it just feels like a big weight off their shoulders. Yeah. Like finally someone can share this burden with me, and at least I can share the burden and hopefully help them reach their goals.
It makes me so happy and sad. So can you explain what exactly a pediatric physiotherapist does?
Sure.
And specifically relating to pelvic floor health.
Yeah. So I will put the plug in for anyone interested in working physiotherapy or occupational therapy, speech language pathology.
JD, listen up. Yeah.
That pediatrics is one of the most incredible areas in the world to work in, especially if you're someone who likes to be dynamic, be fun, be creative, but also be challenged and think on your feet. If you imagine it in a day that I walk into the clinic, my first patient may be a baby under the age of 1 who's working on gross motor milestones, and maybe they have a bit of a tight neck. The patient after that could be a 13-year-old with autism who's working on improving their sports participation skills so they can feel like they're playing with their friends. The patient after that could be a 16-year-old with a concussion from football that they just had. After that could be a pelvic floor patient who's 8 years old and is no longer able to hold their urine in. So you're pivoting on every single hour to do a different thing, to see a different condition, and present yourself to a different kind of style of person.
Mm-hmm.
So pediatric physiotherapy in essence is really a really creative and challenging and dynamic environment. So when you walk into our clinic, like I kind of described before, it is not looking like a doctor's office. It is our clinic here in Kelowna is a big, bright, beautiful gym. We've got a big bank of windows. We've got lots of daylight. We've got toys and games and activities and weights and fun things on the wall. It is an inviting space, and we have a mix of private and public spaces. Now, sometimes the public, having a big open gym when you're doing physiotherapy with kids, especially with different ages, can get a bit chaotic. But one of my favorite things about this is that kids can see other kids reaching their goals,
right,
doing better.
They can see them doing the work.
Exactly.
And then it opens up that possibility for them.
Yeah, this isn't just a me problem. This is something that other people are dealing with as well. And we've actually had people become friends because they're coming to physio at the exact same time, and the moms and dads connect, and the kids become friends, and then we can hopefully start a blossoming friendship after that. So you can walk in and see a very kind of not serious but more formal like teen physiotherapy session of someone using some weights or like doing some really intense core exercise, and you can see one of our therapists very theatrically being a dragon trying to protect their jewels from being stolen while a kid does an obstacle course. It is the absolute best. So a few of the clinicians and I, we make fun of ourselves and saying sometimes that we feel like the theater kids.
I was just gonna say,
yeah,
like
we're
kids.
Yeah, we're constantly
up.
doing like yes and. It's just like, oh, that's a great idea, and we should do this, and we should do that. So I love being goofy and silly on a daily basis, and so the more I can do that, the better. So when you have that environment of this, that's what the kids are walking into. They're first of all, they're coming in, they're like, something's up. This doesn't seem like the doctor's office.
What is
like
this?
Like this seems a little too fun. Like, what are you trying to hide here? And so what we do is then we take our physiotherapy plan that's based on a very in-depth and personalized assessment of both what we see as physiotherapists and what the family and child identify as our key priorities for them. We make a really great treatment plan, and then our treatment plan then takes all those goals and wraps it around exercises that are fun and games. A lot of times, like, the kids will be playing these games, they're like, well, we're not doing physio today, and the parents are like, when is the physio starting? And the physio has already started like 30 minutes ago. We've been doing it the entire time. So it's just such a fun and dynamic environment, and I love it. And we are blessed to have such an incredible team here in Kelowna. I've never met a group of clinicians who are more committed to the bit sometimes too. When I say theater kids, they are fully into it. We are loud sometimes.
That's so great. And so let's say you have a patient that is coming to you specifically for the issues that we talked about in the intro. Is very common, bedwetting or constipation. It's just funny. I was telling somebody that a mutual friend of ours, but I won't name her because this is like, her information. But I was saying you were coming on, and I was just telling her I've been doing some research to prep for our chat today, and just about how constipation is really quite related to all of these things, and like it's often overlooked. Like, it's just like, oh, they're constipated. She's like, oh my gosh, my kid is always constipated. I'm like, well, that's not normal. That's not normal, right? We
don't want children to be constipated. We don't want anyone to be constipated.
Right, no. Exactly, right? Like, and sometimes it's not just like you're not having enough fiber. Sometimes it is, but like, again, when a family comes through the door and the child has these issues, what does that look like? What's the process look like?
So the first thing I like to do when we come to the clinic, and like I said, we have our open space and our private spaces. And our first thing is we're going to come into the private space because this is a very deeply personal issue that I don't want to be saying all these like, hey, I hear your body's leaking pee, like out in the main gym, and then be like, I have been working so hard to hide this fact and you've just outed me in front of everyone. So we go into a private space, and the first thing I want to do is I want to set the table for a family to make sure that they are feeling comfortable. So I introduce myself. I say, hey, I'm Angus. I am a pelvic floor physiotherapist, and that basically means I'm the pee and poo guy. I talk about pee and poo every single day with kids your age, younger, older, whatever you're going to tell me.
At that age, they kind of like those topics.
Oh, absolutely. I'm like, I give you permission to say pee and poo as much as you want in this period. And some of the kids, they go off on that. I'm like, that was a mistake. I should have taken the leash off. But I try to normalize it. you're not going to tell me something that I haven't heard. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. And I want you to know that from reading your details, this is not your fault. So initially taking that weight off their shoulders, understanding that this is a private space that they can share anything with no judgment. And then I also describe what's going to happen in the session, because again, they're coming in, this is their first time. They're having an issue that involves, like, you know, their private parts, their pelvic floor. And I say, look, what we're going to do today is we're first going to chat. I want to understand your story. I want to understand what is typical for you. We're going to talk about routines. We're going to talk about what you like to do and who you are as a person. We're going to play a couple of games. We're going to look at how you move. At no point today am I going to ask you to take your clothes off.
Yeah.
And in the future, we may not even need to do that. For a large majority of my patients, I have been able to do treatment, and a lot of my practitioners that we work with are able to do treatment without any sort of observation. That can give us some really, really great information sometimes in the patients we work with, but it's all about the patient's comfort. If they don't want to do that, there's so much we can do before that step. And we have the luxury of having fantastic family doctors and fantastic pediatricians here in this community that if I really want to get that information, they have an established, trusted relationship with those practitioners that I can say, hey, I'm looking for these things. Do you mind checking these out? And we can keep those relationships a little bit separate. So setting the table in terms of expectations so that they know exactly what's going to happen in the session. There's no surprises. Again, calming things down, letting them relax. And then the first usually session, a lot of it is storytelling. Yeah. Like, tell me about how you got here. Like, what is your big concerns? Where do you want in 10 years? What do you see yourself as? Like, what does that look like? And we work through all that kind of that storytelling to establish then, okay, now tell me about bladder and bowel. Tell me about your pee and poo. Like, what does that look like? Has this always been the case? Who else is involved in this case? What does your day-to-day look like? What does school look like? And we slowly start to piece together a picture of what may be contributing to a child's symptoms. And sometimes we have to go a long time back, all the way to infanthood, to really figure out what may have been the precipitating cause. And sometimes we might not find it. Sometimes there's no rhyme or reason for these other than a specific initial bout of constipation. Sometimes poo is often the culprit. Yeah.
That's what I learned. I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah. Well, we have a saying in pelvic health for kids is that you are constipated until proven innocent.
Oh. Yeah. Because again, it's tied to like some of these other downstream, no pun intended, impacts, right? I'm just going to ask, because I feel like, you know, my children were fortunate enough to not have to deal with these issues. But I feel like this is a question that if I did have a child that was experiencing this, I would want to ask you, what kind of things cause this?
So there are a lot
let's go downstream. Let's look at, you know, bedwetting, which I think is quite common and disruptive. Like, I don't want to minimize constipation, and I know you're going to talk about that.
Oh, I'm going to talk about poo.
Yes, I know. Yeah. And I'm excited for it. But I think that it's very easy to sweep the poo under the rug, right? But the bedwetting is problematic. Right? Not just as a laundry problem, but also just, again, for some of those things, it's like you can see it, right? So what kinds of things would make it so that this becomes an issue?
I think I'm actually really glad you bring up bedwetting, because I feel like there's less urgency from a lot of families to deal with bedwetting because it's only happening at home. It's only happening at night. And it's not visible to their friends. It's not visible to the rest of society for them.
Yeah, if these things you could hide it.
Yeah, if these things are happening every day, there's a little more urgency. People are noticing. There's a lot more kind of cleanup involved. There's a lot more kind of changes to structure. Like, kids might start being homeschooled. So bedwetting's a really great one to talk about, because there's that idea of, and I hear this from a lot of families, that they'll grow out of it.
Totally.
Yeah. So the why of bedwetting, there's a number of causes for bedwetting. So we first need to differentiate between primary bedwetting, primary enuresis, and secondary enuresis. So primary is when you've never been dry overnight. Your bladder has always, since the day you were born, let urine out while you were sleeping. Okay. Secondary is when you've had a period of dryness for at least 6 months. So you achieved dryness, you achieved continence, and then something caused it to backslide and go back the other way.
And at what age is it okay? Like, what are we talking? Where does it sort of become function, I guess?
So the current recommendation from the experts that be is that we should actually start intervening and start thinking about doing things. And doing things can also just be changing your routine during the day, drinking a little more water.
Stop drinking water after dinner.
Yeah. Take a little break from water just before bed. We're not talking about like crazy medical procedures. This is just like a little bit of like habit change. But the powers that be say that at age 6, we should start thinking about this. And the reason for this is that often in the past, this has been, they'll get better. They'll grow out of it. They're going to get, maybe 10, 12. It might take a little bit longer. Yeah. But eventually they will be continent. And that is the truth. Like for these kids who with, primary bedwetting, eventually they will very likely be dry. The other side of that coin is that from 6 to 10, they are very aware that things are different. They are very aware that social situations like sleepovers, like overnight camps, like hanging out with their friends at night is not something that they're comfortable doing. So the reason the recommendation is start at 6 is because the social implications and the effect on their psychological health and their overall development is large and not something that we can ignore. So that's why I recommend to families, it is okay if this bladder is still developing up until that age, but after that, we should really start thinking about what are some small strategies we can start to implement so that you can feel more confident that we are on the road to success.
So then you started to outline sort of the two different, I don't know, pathologies, whatever, in bedwetting, right? So it's never dry, and then dry for a period of time, and then sort of regression, right? Yeah. So then again, just kind of like going back to what might be the causes of those things.
Totally. So in that case where they've never been dry, so that's primary enuresis, in those cases, there's usually 3 kind of main contributing factors that we're trying to go through one by one. One can be, in some rare cases, just like an altered sleep arousal. So their bodies never really get into that full parasympathetic rest stage. They're not getting into that deep sleep. And as such, their bladder is never being told by their nervous system to hold. It's being told to fill and empty. Another one that we can look at is like an overactive detrusor, or the muscle that surrounds your bladder. So that's kind of like your overactive bladder. That can be caused itself by a number of different things. And that's very simply treated through what's called urotherapy, where we're doing really good constipation management. We're taking bathroom breaks when we need to, and we're listening to our body. But the other one of our kind of 3 components of primary enuresis is the genetic component. So some kids, based on their genetics, will have a delayed timeline of when their body starts to reliably produce ADH, so antidiuretic hormone. And we know that past, I believe, I can't remember, age 5 or 6, I think it's about 20% of the population who are in this category every year will become dry. So 20% in 6, 20% in 7, all the way up to age 10 or 11, where 100% of the people who fall in this genetic category will become dry.
So it just takes them
That's the ones
longer.
that's where the research says, and that's why we get this, they'll grow out of it, because these kids do grow out of it. But even just in this primary, that's just a part of the population. So we can tailor our treatments and we tailor our assessments to ask these questions to see if they fall in this category. And if they do, the answer at the end of the session is not, you're in the genetic category, you can grow out of it. There are things that we can do. We can try and practice. We can try and get the body into good habits. And we can also make sure that nothing else is contributing to this to set them up for success. So I'm very thorough. I like to try and make sure that we've turned over every rock and we're very sure about our plan moving forward, because the last thing I want to do is set families on a plan that I don't know what the answer is going to be. And then the secondary, there's tons and tons of reasons why a child may have this relapse. Some are more serious. If things are slowly happening or slowly starting to change, not as serious. But if you have a sudden change of bladder and bowel habits, especially during the day and the night, that is definitely a reason to come to the emergency. That is, we need to go see a doctor immediately to find out what is going on. But those ones that are like slowly coming back on, oftentimes we're thinking of things like overactive bladder. We're thinking of things like constipation, especially functional constipation, that are altering how our bladders are performing during the day and during the night. So that's why, especially because there's so many reasons for the secondary bedwetting, that's why this is really a team effort. There's things that I'll be able to kind of tease out. There's things that I definitely need a pediatrician or a GP to tease out. There's things that I'll need like a pharmacist to help with, or a dietitian. So we all contribute to the puzzle that is what is going on, and we're trying to make sure that we're collaboratively working to figure out what that root cause is so that we really get to it.
Is it I don't want to say usually because healthcare people don't like the word usually. But what I'll say is, would it be fair to characterize that sort of regression, like, door number 2, let's say, right? That something happened, like there was some sort of like interruption, whether it was a traumatic experience, whether it was an injury, whether it was, I don't know, like a bad dream or something like that, but something would have happened, like an incident that could trigger that. Or would it just happen?
It can be. Again, okay. it definitely can be.
Yeah, I'm trying to think in the mind of like, a mom or a dad that might be listening to this episode and their child is experiencing this door number 2 scenario, which I think is a little bit harder to understand. Like door number 1, okay, not quite fully developed yet. Maybe there's other sort of like systemic things going on there. But door number 2, it's like, well, you had it and now it's gone, or now it's not there. What kind of things could precipitate that?
Well, the biggest culprit is constipation.
Okay, there it is.
So we can deal with that. But not to sweep your other point on the rug, stress and life stressors and big changes can definitely cause changes in bladder and bowel habits, especially for kids who have had challenges with bladder and bladder habits in the past. Yeah. So I always warn families that I'm working with that if they're going to say, if we're going from elementary to middle school, if we are moving cities, if a loved one is going to pass and we're expecting that or we're unexpecting that, if there's some sort of trauma, it is totally normal to expect these things to backslide and change. Even like going on vacation, if you imagine just like the change in habits and routine and diet that happens with a vacation, I usually tell families, expect that things are probably going to get worse a little bit. And if they don't, hallelujah, we did it. But we will get back on track when you get back. On the side of like trauma, we have the CAC here in Kelowna.
Yes,
Incredible
Children's Advocacy Center, amazing.
Incredible organization. And I definitely see patients who've come through there who have gone through incredibly traumatic experiences. And as a result, one of the things that is presenting is altered bladder and bowel habits. So, again, there's so much that can be caused, but yes, the stress sucks. Stress can definitely cause some changes in kids.
Well, and we've talked at length with Kareen about how stress impacts adult pelvic floor function, right? So I know we said in our intro that children are not just little adults, but in this particular case, they also have stressors, and that response, the clenching and the, could elicit a similar response as it would in adults, which would be that urinary incontinence response. Okay, so let's look at the most common cause, though. Okay, am I right in saying that?
I always poo's in the room.
The poo's in the room. Right?
Poo's listening.
The constipation.
I always like talking about this, and then I think it's the thing that surprised me most with pelvic health is how frequently.
Me too. This was like, I was like, what? Oh,
you had the stat. One in three kids across Canada will experience functional constipation. And so I think for people listening and for families that I work with, what is really helpful to know is that there is a difference between traditional constipation where, you're not going for a few days. When you do go, there are small little rabbit pellets. It hurts. You're pushing. You're like, how is that all that's come out? I've been eating this entire time.
Yeah, like where is it all going?
Where's it going? That's more your traditional constipation.
It's the story of my life. Listen, we've crossed a line on this podcast.
We are in this space where it shouldn't be taboo.
No.
Now, when we first meet each other in a room and we come and I say, hi, I'm Angus. I'm not going to tell you the first thing I say when I meet you is this is what my poo looked like this morning. But with your loved ones, it'd be great if we can get into a habit of, not talking about pee and poo. The more we talk about it, the more we can understand what is typical and what is atypical and what we can do to understand what we can do to deal with that.
Right.
So we talked about traditional constipation. That's that rabbit pellets. That's it. I'm not going. That's what a lot of people will think first of with constipation. Functional constipation at its essence is not all the poo is coming out. Okay. You're not fully emptying. And you might not know that. You might not feel it. But then the telltale signs are other issues start to crop up. You could have bloating, you could have distension, you could have loss of appetite. You could have this feeling of like, I'm always kind of full and I never really feel like I get everything out, but I'm not really sure what else to do. You can have urinary issues. You can eventually, at the long-term end of side of things or chronic side of things, you can have poo leaks. And so that is a sign that poo is not leaving your body the way it should. And we're starting to see this back up into the rectum, into the colon and the large intestine. So and
is that because I know a little bit about this subject. Personal experience. Okay. We'll put it out there. But
safe space.
Is that because the muscles are not working in there? Like why is it called functional constipation is as opposed to like traditional constipation? Like, what's the difference? What because like I'm assuming you would get the rabbit poo for both things.
Yeah, so instead of the rabbit poo, what you end up is like with large masses of stool, and these large masses of stool take up space, gather more poo. And what you eventually see is a stretching of the rectum. You see a stretching
like boulders.
Of the colon. Yes, it can be in some kids. I have felt an impacted stool that was probably the size of like a butternut squash inside a child. And
my gosh.
And it is wild that they can function so well in life despite having this massive amount of stool inside them. So that's a bit wild. So the general pathology is, for some reason, not all the poo got out. In early kids, oftentimes it is a painful poo episode. So it might have been an episode of traditional constipation. It hurt. I don't want to poo anymore. I'm going to hold it in for dear life. That leads to a bigger stool building up that we can't fully empty because it's just large or it's hard and it's not coming out.
Yeah.
And that just becomes a wicked cycle of constipation. Yeah. We can't get it all out. It gets bigger. We can't get it all out. It gets bigger. I don't want to get it out. It hurts. I don't want to get it out. I don't feel good.
Out, it gets bigger.
Yeah. So now this rectum stretch and this colon stretch then also has the dual effect of, as we start to stretch out the colon and rectum become less effective in their peristaltic contraction. So their ability to squeeze and move things along becomes less effective, because muscles work really best when they are at their optimal length. And if you start to stretch things out, they don't have the same capacity to squeeze and move things through. So as we start to see that stretch happen, then we're really working uphill. It takes a lot of work to get this poo out of the body. And eventually we get to a point where we really have very little ability to squeeze poo through. And this is in very severe long-term cases of functional constipation. And what comes through is that your poo starts as a very liquidy substance in your small intestine, and gradually through absorption of fluids in the large intestine becomes the more solid substance we know. If your large intestine can't absorb all those liquids and you have this massive impact of stool, that liquid just goes right through. It gets to your internal anal sphincter, which says, I sense a liquid, I'm going to get this out of my body. You have a poo leak.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
but that's the extreme side of things. I do see lots of kids with encopresis. That's what we call poo leaks. But I more primarily see kids with bladder leaks. And oftentimes people will say, okay, well, you're telling me that my child has lots of poo inside their body. It's not leaking out. They also go on a daily basis. This is the very confusing with functional constipation.
Right, that you're still going.
You're still going. You can still poop every day. It can be soft. And that's why we say
fine.
It can look okay. Typically, we start to see things be a little more infrequent, a little bit more like maybe potentially large in frequency, a little bit harder. But we can have those where we're like, you're pooping every single day and it's soft, but I don't think it's all coming out because your bladder has changed how it's acted. And so if we have a big, massive stool in the rectum, there's only so much room inside our body. And right beside our rectum is, of course, our bladder. If that poo presses on our bladder, that can cause the detrusor, the muscle on the outside, to act a little differently. And it may empty before it's fully full, where we have a pee leak. It may overstretch because the way it's been able to contract has changed. So then we're getting an overfilled bladder and we're peeing a little bit. And then we stop. And then we have to wait for it to fill up again. We pee a little bit and it stops. And so we're getting these tiny pees like every 30 minutes, but we're never getting that full pee. So because of the interplay between the bladder and the bowel, that's why we always are, like, the bladder is almost our warning sign for something that's going on in the bowel. And that's why when we're treating both, we're trying to treat both at the same time.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. So So the investigation on your part eventually leads to constipation.
Sometimes, but almost all the times. I don't want to make poo into the culprit and make everyone just terrified of this poo that's not like this. Like, well, how will I ever know if it's all getting out?
Okay? So you talked about, yeah, exactly. How would you ever know if it's all getting out, especially if this is? Oh man, I love this podcast. Like everybody has a different poo profile, right?
Yeah.
I even just noticed in our family, the frequency and for some people is more than others. What is optimal? Because you talked about like pooing once a day. What's optimal for kids? Let's say you're eating a healthy diet or whatever. Let's call it an amount of calories, because I do think diet's probably going to be part of your answer. But like, let's say you're just eating normal. Everybody's, full, and what is a reasonable amount to be going number 2?
Okay, so let's talk about frequency, but let's also talk about like that idea of like, how do I know I'm getting it all out?
Yeah.
So frequency in kids, what we're aiming for.
I am loving this conversation, by the way.
Great.
This is so helpful.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So there is there's a medical team out at McMaster Children's Hospital that created this thing called the McMaster Go Poop Guidelines, which is a lovely resource that I hand out to every family.
Way to put yourself on the map, McMaster.
Which is a really lovely resource that helps family deal with functional constipation, and it really outlines what we want, what our goalposts are. To put the football term for the
thanks
for
for
people
that.
in the room.
There you go, Jason.
And what we're aiming for is we're ideally aiming for a poop that happens every day. It's soft. It's easy to pass. You don't strain. You don't have to push, and you feel like you're all empty. They call it like the easy poop.
Yep.
Now, that being said, some kids and some adults will not poop every single day. So my recommendation to a lot of families is it is okay if you're not pooping every single day, as long as the poops are still quote unquote easy.
Okay.
They're soft, they're easy to pass, you're not straining, there's no pain, you feel fully empty at the end of it. And so there's things that we can do to kind of help make sure that, again, that there is no strain, that you are fully emptying. And one of the best ways to do that is to kind of coach kids on how to poo. Mm-hmm. It's one thing that they kind of start to do naturally, but they may not be doing the way we optimally want them to. Right. So one is poo position. So when they're on a toilet, and especially this is for little kids who are graduating to the big toilet in their house, we want feet to be supported, and we want to be knees a little bit higher than the hips, but no higher than the belly button. This helps put our pelvis at an optimal position, and there's a very fun muscle inside our pelvis called the puborectalis that hooks around our colon or rectum. And when we're in this really nice, the squatty potty position, it helps loosen that up and allows that full emptying to occur without straining.
So then most toilets are not built for little people.
Look, I'm a short guy. Most toilets aren't built for short people.
I was just where were we? We're at the Delta, and they have these tiny little toilets. Like, they're so close to the ground. But what you're saying is like, those are optimal.
That's almost a little bit more accessible and optimal for people. Now, a full deep squat, like you may see in some more Eastern cultures, there's nothing wrong with that. That for us who are more used to a kind of 90-degree sit position, that's probably going to be a little too much. It's going to tip our pelvises too back, because a lot of us don't have the range to get into that deep squat. If you got the range,
I would fall over.
Oh yeah, we're falling into the toilet. We're getting into it. Yeah. So for most kids that don't have the flexibility to get in that deep squat, or that's not what your setup is home, a small stool, and this doesn't have to be like, you can go around, you can see the squatty potty, which is a phenomenal toilet addition for families.
So this is a thing.
There's a thing. Oh yeah, there's a thing. I mean, trademarked right now, squatty potty, awesome. That tucks underneath the toilet, and it's really great because it helps put your feet in that really nice position, and it also is made for adults as well. Little plug there. Okay,
just so you know.
But it doesn't have to be something expensive. It can be honestly like your $3 step stool from the dollar store. Right. The idea you're looking for that ideal position. Knees higher than hips, no higher than belly button. And the biggest thing is there is this inherent reflex to push your poo out, to squeeze it out, to get it out as fast as we can. Don't do it. That. Don't do it. Let the body relax. Your body has all the tools it needs to get the poo out. You just have to be patient and help it with it. And the best thing we can do is breathe.
Do you remember back in the day when there used to be a basket of magazines? in the bathroom. That was actually a good thing.
The amount of books that I think I read through. I think I got into Calvin and Hobbes just by being on the toilet reading Calvin and Hobbes.
My family used to have crossword puzzles in the toilet, but I feel like we don't do that anymore because like maybe our lifestyle is such, even kids too, that we're just so busy, or we're just like sitting on our phone, which is like super weird. I do not do that, but I do know people that do, like, you know, and maybe the phone's not actually relaxing if you're like checking emails and such, but like basically what you're saying is it's important to like relax.
It's important to relax. It's very important to relax and to breathe,
Yeah.
to breathe deep. We want to make sure one of the things I coach some of the kids is like this idea of flower and candle breathing, which is this very slow inhale, smell the flowers, blow out the candles.
That's so good.
Your diaphragm naturally works with your pelvic floor at the same time. You might have talked with Corinne about this, that as you take a big breath in, your diaphragm descends, your pelvic floor also descends and relaxes.
As you inhale.
As you inhale, you're generating this nice big pressure that will often give you all the pressure you need to get that poo out. You breathe out, it relaxes, it comes back up with your diaphragm. You just rinse and repeat until you're feeling all empty. Now, there'll be still people that your body reflexively wants to give a little push. It's okay. But we don't want you sitting down, squeezing as hard as you can, which often is going to result only in a little bit getting out and then being like, great, back to my day, back to productivity, back to play. And you bring up a great point, like this lifestyle idea of stress, play, efficiency. Like I need to get back to that game that I was playing or that my friend as fast as possible. And it's one of the things that like, if I can coach people on like, my ideal is that no one needs to come see me, that we deal with these problems like when kids are really young. If I have no pelvic floor patients in the future, I will honestly be so happy. So happy. So I want families to encourage kids to slow down, to take a break, to make sure that they're set up well for success in the bathroom, and to coach them on like how to do that poo, how to do that pee. If everyone can sit down for this, take some breaths, have their body in a nice supported position, we're gonna have a lot more success.
How important is it? So yeah, the urge to poo. So I think this might also be a place where some kids get stopped up a little bit. Again, no pun intended.
Puns are welcome.
But like the sense that you know, like there's something there and you have to go. Like I have a child, I won't name which one, but this one refused to poo at school. And so she just they just wouldn't. And it's okay, she's pretty chill. And as a result, missed the window.
Yeah.
It's like, what happened? We all know this. It's like, this is not a good time to poo. It's not like pee where you can just like ignore it. Like you can't ignore it. It's not going to go away. Like if you ignore the poo, it kind of goes away.
So you have to understand what is causing that urge.
Yeah. Like deconstruct that.
Yeah. So both in bladder and bowel, urge is given by stretch.
Okay.
So there is enough inside the rectum, or there's enough inside the bladder to stretch out the walls of the bladder or the rectum to cause that urge to poo to happen. So your body then tells you, I'm ready, I've got enough, it's time for us to go. If you delay that urge, the poo and pee don't go anywhere. They're still right there. They're right there in the rectum, they're right there in the bladder. But your brain then tells your bladder rectum walls to relax. It's like, you know what, today or this moment right now is not the right time. Please tell us, give us another reminder. And it's like almost hitting the snooze alarm.
Yeah.
So sure enough, 5 minutes later or an hour later, your body's like, hello.
I feel like you can snooze number 2, but number 1 doesn't snooze.
So you'd be surprised on how often you can snooze number 2 and number 1 with some of the kids. They are unbelievable withholders. But yes, at some point, the cup runneth over. It comes out.
Yeah.
And so when you have this kind of cycle of I'm ready, I'm stretched, I relax, more comes in. I'm ready, I'm stretched, I'm relaxed, more comes in. Then all of a sudden, there's no way you're getting all that out in the same sitting. And if you do, power to you. If you keep doing this habit, you keep doing this withhold, delay, eventually you're probably going to be dealing with a different problem.
Like a toilet problem?
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
But from your talks with Green,
it all makes sense.
The toilet problems, but also from your talks with Green, like in adults, if you're constantly going through this withholding, and if your habits are you will only poo at home, then you are restricting yourself from having an optimal core function through the entire day.
Right.
And that could be, you know what, you might be like, you know what, I never really feel hungry at lunchtime. It's like, well, it's
because you're gripping.
You're gripping, you're holding, and your body's telling you, well, don't eat because there's no room for anything else to come down here.
Yeah. Wow. And so, so there's lots. So when we feel the need, the urge, or even just like talking to our children about how important it is when they do feel the urge to act on it.
Yeah. And that is,
like, don't hold it.
That is one of the core tenets of a urotherapy, which is kind of like the name for our baseline treatment for bladder problems, is when you feel urge, you stop what you're doing and you go, which is such a hard concept for kids. Like I will give so much respect to families who can actually make this happen, because I've got kids of my own. I know that telling them to stop what they're doing when it is super fun is near impossible. And this is for our neurotypical kids. So many of the kids I work with are actually neurodivergent, and this sense of urge or this ability to stop what I'm doing and change and pivot to something else, to transition activities, is really, really challenging. And so families like that and kids like that, we also have the challenge of transitions being tough. We also have that urge itself can present in very different ways in children with neurodiversity. So
tell me more about this.
Well, in the idea of neurodiversity is that your body is, not exactly developing the same way as other kids. And this can, there's a saying we have with children with autism is you meet one child with autism, you've met one child with autism. It's not like you all of a sudden understand autism at that point. So the urge sensation for bladder and poo for one child with autism or one child with ADHD or neurodiversity could be completely different from another one. So sometimes what is really helpful for us is to understand, well, what are the feelings your body tells you when you need to go? Because it might not be like, for us, it might not be that heaviness in our bladder. It might not be this like kind of pressure in a rectum. It might be, you know what, actually, I notice that actually my heart rate starts going a little bit. Or I might notice that I get butterflies in my stomach when I need to go pee. So we try to find this language that their body's trying to tell them so that they can understand the feelings their body's telling, so they can take action on that. They're like, okay, I understand when A plus B and C happens, my body's telling me I need to go pee. So then therefore I should stop and go pee.
Right.
So it is a hugely challenging process. So sometimes when I ask urge, some families will just like, well, I don't know. They laugh. They're like, we have no idea. The urge is such a strange sensation. Even like hunger, that sort of thing can be challenging.
Well, and it's so interesting that you say that. I guess we just take that for granted, that we were just having this conversation about how we see, remember, Arden, the colors, like if you see orange, or do I see orange? But we just take for granted that the sensation that I feel in my body might be the same as what a child might feel in their body. But what you're saying is it could be different for them.
Absolutely.
And, we've all seen, bless them, they're just like cute, and but they're like, they waited too long, like they're standing there, you're at the airport and the little kids
everybody
just like
knows
holding like actually holding themselves and like moving their legs around or whatever, and it's just like somebody finally says, do you have to go pee? And they're like, oh yeah, I do. Like they haven't even really registered that they have to go pee. They're just all of a sudden like holding themselves and like moving around. Because they feel this weird thing, but they haven't necessarily put it together.
And also part of that is like their ability to pay attention to their environment and their body at the same time is still developing. They might be like, airport, like, what a cool environment. So much going on. There's planes landing. There's people around you.
I don't want to leave my parents.
There's fears, there's anxiety. And then all of a sudden you're like, take that moment to pause and reflect on your like interoceptive skills here. And you're like, oh, wow, I got to go pee. It's like that takes a lot of effort to shift that mind's eye inwards. And so like, and sometimes that can be really helpful to have like your family, to have your teacher, to have your friends, to be able to say like, I notice it looks like you need to go. It's like, I see the pee dance. It's like
pee dance. That's what it is.
Yeah. The pee dance.
So, okay. So what do you, I don't want to minimize what you do in your clinic. I think it's probably really amazing, and we probably can't cover it in 10 minutes left of our podcast. But what are some of the things that, if we're talking about functional constipation being the culprit, or something more benign related to the pelvic floor, what's some of the advice that you give children and parents that might be listening?
For sure. So one of the first things we do when we talked about that investigation phase, we're going to do a diary to find out what is your normal, what is your typical, how often are you going poo, how often are you going pee, what are you eating, what are you drinking, and when. So we have this baseline that we can understand kind of a snapshot of them and kind of give some recommendations. It looks like you only drink 1 glass of water a day. We're going to need to up that. We want to be drinking 2 to 3 times your body weight in kilograms in ounces of water. So we're going to step that up. We're going to be drinking that water throughout the day. Oh, it looks like you don't eat any really sort of fiber. You eat a lot of like kind of like snacky foods. There's no real vegetables in your diet right now. Let's add something that has some fiber that maybe isn't, like that big leafy green you're worried about, that maybe is like a seed, or it's like you like pomegranate seeds. That's a great source of fiber. Let's have that as our snack in our lunch kit. So from a fluid and fiber, we're looking at that. We're taking a look at, where are the gaps? And then from that poo and pee perspective, it's like, okay, you're functionally constipated. We talked about kind of setting your body up for success in terms of like how to go poo, but we also want to talk about when to go poo. Your body is more naturally inclined to go poo 20 minutes after a meal, called the gastrocolic reflex. And so what we want kids to do is we encourage them after every meal in a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, if possible, 20 minutes later, move your body a little bit, go for a little kind of jog, jump around, play a little bit, then head to the bathroom, sit in your really good position, breathe, and hang out there 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay, just see what happens.
See what happens. And you know what? What we really want to do is we want to reward kids for that try. If the poo doesn't happen, that is okay. You took the effort. You made the effort to go to the bathroom and complete this. You're taking care of your body. I'm so proud of you for doing so.
Yeah.
I'm not proud of you for not having poo, and I'm not really proud of you for having poo. I'm going to celebrate and go nuts and go ballistic. Like when you like have this poo, I'm going to be so enthusiastic, excited for you, but I'm also going to be really proud of you when it doesn't happen. And then also looking at pees. So like on a pre-frequency, are we seeing that, you go once in the morning, once at night, and there's nothing in the middle? Or are we seeing that you're going 20 times in a day? So we're aiming for 5 to 7 Ps throughout the day that are a good volume. They're taking like 5 to 10 seconds to come out. Satisfying. You feel fully empty. The color is kind of light yellow or light and clear. It, again, doesn't hurt to come out. It gently comes out. You've got that kind of, I do the P sounds with all the kids too. I'm like, I'm going to make some sounds and I want you to let me know which one is your P. And I'll go through like, okay. So we want like a, so you got your regular bell curve. You got that. Okay. So things are slowly starting. You reach peak flow. They slowly taper off. Okay. You've got your staccato pattern. So that can happen in kids with pelvic floor dysfunction and tension, where you have what's called dyssynergia, where your pelvic floor really struggles to relax. And so you push and you get a little pee out and then it contracts.
I feel like that's more common for boys.
No? I tend to see a lot more boys in my practice, 1, because I'm a male practitioner, but 2, because I see a lot more boys with neurodiversity. But we can definitely see it in both genders. Okay. Because just everyone's good at holding. Pelvic floor dyssynergia as like a diagnosis is a lot less common to have this like really functional inability to control your pelvic floor. And we really work on coaching on how to contract, how to relax. And then we also have the kids who, I would say this one is definitely more of our boys, is the it's like the
fire hose.
The fire hose at full volume for like 1 second. They're like, I'm getting it all out at once and then I'm getting back out there. So I would definitely say our boys who are like they don't itching to go play.
Fully like empty. They're just like get the skim the bit off the top and
absolutely.
Away you go.
You get one super soaker blast and then you're getting out of there. So we look
also
at
not optimal. I'm
also not optimal. If you've got that bell curve, that slow start,
the
bell curve where you're feeling fully empty at the end of it, it takes like 5 to 10 seconds. You're great. Okay. You're laughing. So we look at the diary, we look at kind of where the gaps are. We start addressing all of those, and then we get families to charge towards those goals. And those ones are often just modifying habits. Okay, you're only going bathroom only go pee twice a day. I want you to sit down every hour and a half. That's our goal there.
Yeah.
You're not eating the food. We're going to change your diet. We're going to change your fluids, that sort of thing. So these are the habits they're starting to try. And then we'll slowly lean on to some of our physiotherapy exercises. If we don't have control over pelvic floor, let's do some exercises that it can stretch and build strength for pelvic floor. So for kids, one of the best ones is like our big deep frog jumps. So getting that bum nice and low, slowly doing a big deep breath at the end there, we talked about being a theater kid. And doing like, so I'll get down there, I'll be like, I want to hear your loudest ribbit. Like, I want you to be your loudest frog. And they'll be like, ribbit. I'm like, no. I'm like, ribbit. And then they go, and we do a big jump and we land with control. And that's such a great motion for engaging and stretching our pelvic floor in an eccentric way.
Interesting. Okay.
So those deep squat positions, those jumps, those bear crawls, things that are getting the body moving, we'll start to introduce those exercises to help train the pelvic floor. If they're older, we'll be doing direct pelvic floor training. We'll get them to feel their pelvic floor. And I'm like, well, I want you to breathe. I want you to feel what that feels like. I want you to try and do a squeeze, hold that pee in or hold that poo in. What does that feel like? And then that usually gives us a start to where we want to go. We may need to layer on extra stretches, extra exercises, extra play, things like that in collaboration with other plans. But however, as you're kind of seeing already, it can be a lot.
Yeah.
And so for families that are already coming to us overwhelmed with a problem that they can't solve,
all of a sudden
the last thing I want to do is give them a textbook and be like, here's your roadmap to success, and to only overwhelm them further. So what we do is this thing's not going to go away overnight. It's not going to be just like a 1 week treatment and it's gone. Goals. We're going to set really good goals, but we're going to introduce the plan and steps. And we're going to give you, my goal is always to give the least amount of intervention necessary to reach goals that are functional and meaningful to you. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to overwhelm you. I want families to be honest if I give them too much, and I want them to be honest when they're not doing the program. Because if I'm like, oh, you're not, like, how are things going? You're not seeing change? I've been doing the program. They're like, I'm like, are you though? Because I would have seen a little bit of change. And if not, like, okay, if you're not seeing progress and you're doing really great, we need to change our strategies. So not overwhelming families is a big part of what we do, is really making sure that we're tailoring our intervention to what the family has the capacity, what they can handle.
What happens if you have a child that's been constipated for a long time and is impacted, and do you put them on a slow program to change the habits, or like, how do you get rid of, I mean, I'm sorry, but you said the squash poo, and like, how do you get, because I'm a mom, I would not want my child having that thing.
Totally. So that's where we really have to have our medical practitioners on our side.
Because like, you don't want to just give them like a...
No. And it's also not my scope to prescribe medication. I'm a physiotherapist. I'm really great with exercise. I'm great with like lifestyle changes and things like that. Medication is not my scope. I do know that medication is incredibly important, and working with either, if you are someone who has a GP and a pediatrician, or you're someone who works with a naturopathic doctor, we can find some solutions in both those places. Even if you don't have access to either of those, your local pharmacist can have some solutions that can help you out.
Okay.
And so often what we first start families that are quite impacted or have a lot of functional constipation is going on, we do what's called a clean out. So the medical practitioner will prescribe a certain amount of whatever medication they're taking, whether that is, the first protocol medication for a lot of families is Restorelax, your PEG 3350. They'll take a high dose of that to basically try and push all the poo out. Usually it takes a couple clean outs for kind of some mild to moderate stool impaction for that kind of butternut squash situation. We're probably thinking that we actually need to come to the hospital for a hospital grade clean out. So we're blessed to have this to KGH, an amazing facility here. There is kids who I've worked with who have come to basically for inpatient day visits to deal with this impaction, because you need some extra help with it, and you might only be able to get a little bit out of the time. Right. So the goal is first with these long-term functional constipations is to get it all out,
and then start with a clean slate.
Yeah, to keep it out. Now that can be tough because it can recur. Because if you remember, we're stretching our colon and rectum out, or they don't have the ability to squeeze and move things through as they could in the past. So it's very likely you're going to get impacted again. But sometimes families will be like, oh no, their colon, that's them for life. We've stretched it out. It's like, no, it has this incredible resiliency. It can go back to its original shape and size. It just takes time. It's really, really slow. So oftentimes with families, and I say this also with families that I work with who have chronic pain. So kids, unfortunately, can also have chronic pain. So pain that lasts longer than an initial kind of 6-week period. And if we think of like the body like that spring that's being wound up, if you're winding up that spring for 3 years, it may take 3 years of slow unwinding to deal with this problem. And the same goes for functional constipation. It may take years to deal with this, and it's going to take consistency and diligence to get through this, but we will get to it at the end.
That's amazing. So this conversation has been awesome. We don't talk about pee and poo enough. I really don't think we do. I mean, we have. This is like our third episode on, but in this particular case, I think it's just such a good topic, particularly when we're talking about kids, because when we develop those good habits when we're younger, then perhaps maybe as we get older, we don't end up maybe in Kareen's office or, having to deal with some of those issues that come as a result of not developing great habits or awareness or, drinking enough water, eating enough fiber, all of those things. If we can have that understanding when kids are young, then we can be preventative so that, as they get later in life, maybe they can worry about the other things that come up.
Yes. Yeah. Life gets complicated fast.
Complicated.
Yeah. If we can make them experts in their own bodies to understand what should be kind of typical and what they can understand is normal for them, then they will be able to understand when things are not that way. So it might not be that you have to talk about poo on every single day.
No.
But if you can tell them from the get-go kind of what to expect, then they can tell you when things go awry. I guess.
And I think as parents, we don't know either. We don't talk, like we talk about it, we more complain about it, but like we don't know. I didn't know. There's so many things that I asked you today. I just genuinely didn't know the answer. Like how frequent, what does it feel like? All of these things. Angus, thank you so much for being.
My pleasure.
You have a way of talking about this that doesn't feel weird.
Thank you.
So which is like really great because it is a subject that, could be weird for some people, but you've done a really good job of articulating it in a way that sort of balances what reality is for a lot of people with, what might be happening below the surface that we don't know about. If you were to leave kind of our audience, anybody listening right now, with any sort of parting thoughts, your words of advice, what you have learned and what you hope sort of for the future of our kiddos in this community, what would it be? Just like wrap it up, big bow.
I think you've hit on it in that I want people to talk about this. We can't deal with what we can't talk about. We don't know what we can't see or we can't hear. So the more we talk about this, the more we're open with this. And, I feel for families who have teenagers who are like, well, look, my son's 16. He is not going to tell me what his poo looks like. But if we can introduce the topics or be like, even introduce it just in like hey, I heard this really interesting information. Like, can I share that with you? And then just leave that little nugget there for them to digest. And with our youngers, it's let's talk about it, but it doesn't have to be like, oh, hey, like, did you have a soft snake poo today? Or did you have the rabbit pellets? It can be like buying books that talk about poo. It's like, oh, like this person, there's lots of really, really great books out there that have been written by fantastic authors about kids who have poo and pee challenges. And to have those in the library, be like, hey, this is an interesting one. Can we read this one tonight?
We had one when my kids were little. It was called Everybody Poops.
Oh, it's a great one.
Oh, it's like a classic.
Yeah. Oh, we read it all the time. Yeah. Everybody Poops. There's my daughter and I sing like the song. There's like it's like a poop song. It's like the birds and the bees, they poop. And she loves it. Your mom and your dad, they poop.
I love it.
So yeah, let's talk about it. Let's not leave it in this kind of dark corner of our minds where we're the only ones talking about this. Let's make it something that is easy for us to bring up so that it doesn't have to be this problem that only you're dealing with.
Yeah. And to be sure, if you're listening to this and you have a family member or child that is struggling with these issues, you are not alone. I was really, I was surprised by the stats, but then I actually wasn't. And I wonder even sometimes with stats if it's even more than those stats represent, because those stats are just what we know, right?
I would 100% think that the true numbers of people affected by this are unreported because they don't want to say anything.
Yeah.
The amount of people in a single room who may be dealing with something that they have not told a single person in their life is huge.
Yeah, totally. And as always, just encouragement that there's help out there. Really great people like Angus, and sounds like your team is amazing, that can help with these issues in a way that is informed and kind and compassionate and at the level that our kids can relate to. And they're not just, mini adults. And so it is important that they're recognized as their own, and that these issues are unique to them, and that there's a place that they can go to get help that will feel safe and nurturing and maybe kind of awesome, because it actually sounds a little bit fun.
Look, we're absolutely going to make it fun.
Thank you so much, Angus, for joining me this morning for a very enlightening conversation. This is probably a record number. We should have like a poo counter on this episode.
Ding.
Ding. But again, really breaking down the barriers and talking about a subject that doesn't get talked about enough. And thank you for that. And thank you so much for doing the work that you're doing in our community.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I love being here. Thank you.